So here we are at Mount Muro, which is the airport built by Straits Resources. Basically, it's a very large functioning gold mine with about 1,000 people on site most of the time. The company uses no mercury to process its ore, relying instead on an up-to-date cyanide processing plant and tailings dam. However, there are also thousands of small-scale miners digging within the concession area. These small-scale operations use massive quantities of mercury on a daily basis. This massive contamination problem began first here in 1999, when illegal mercury and cyanide processing technologies first spread to this region from North Sulawesi. For the past 10 years, these artisanal mining activities have been responsible for releasing 50 tons of mercury into the environment each year. YTS has been taking a close look at the many small-scale processing units that exist in the area to see what can be done to solve this problem. We're going to have a look at the processing that takes place in this shed, how much mercury they're using, how they're grinding the ore, and what they're doing with the secondary processing using cyanide. The rock comes like this, as hard rock, quartz, and then it gets broken down by hand in the field. They put it in sacks and then they bring it by truck here, and then they've got to break it down into sand. So it carries a little bit of gold. It might not be visible gold, but it's in there. The ore gets put inside to the trommel together with steel bars like this, which grind over hours and destroy the rock, pulverizing it and turning it into very fine sand. They're closing them up to run the second cycle because one cycle's never enough. They always run 2 or 3 cycles, sometimes up to 4 cycles. Each time they do that, they're going to put the mercury in there before they run it. So the mercury is used and reused and reused each time. The only loss is what goes into the amalgam ball. This amalgam here is the product of 4 trommels. There's 24 trommels in this shed. So each trommel has to be taken and processed individually. And this guy right now is pouring mercury directly into the bowl. And then he's going to squeeze all of that mercury through cloth. The mercury is coming out, and what's going to remain inside the cloth is just the amalgam ball like this, together with the precious metal. You can see what he managed to squeeze out was all of this mercury that was in the amalgam. So they've actually removed that mercury from the amalgam so that they have less mercury in the amalgam when they burn it. So that's the finished product right there. Berapa gram di sini Pak kira-kira Pak? About 1 kilo or more of amalgam there. So 800 grams or more of that would be mercury, and 200 grams would be precious metal, mostly silver. Now he's going to weigh it. Boom! So okay, we were 800 grams of amalgam, and 80% of that will be mercury. So it's about 640 grams of mercury. Now that's the product of six trommels. So you have to multiply that by 4. So today they'll probably produce around 4 kilos of amalgam this one morning.
10 gelundung itu, 10 ini. 10 ya? Iya, 10.
When they finish, they will use water to wash the sand out. The sand will just wash straight down below, so that actually later on it can be bagged, and they'll take those bags and they'll take it over there to the cyanide vats, because the cyanide vat is where the secondary processing of this material takes place. I think we can see from the sheer size of these vats just how much ore these small-scale miners are processing. They're using quite a sophisticated technology which requires cyanide. Now, it's unfortunate they're using mercury as well, because the mercury and the cyanide combine to create mercury cyanide complexes, which basically are very, very soluble and can enter the water and enter the waterways very easily. So we know that a lot of mercury goes into this process, and it sits inside the vat for about 3 weeks. But the mercury actually then comes out when it's all released and the tailings are washed out. The mercury comes out with it, and then eventually it'll just float off down into that valley, into the gully, and then end up in the Burrito River, which is just a few hundred meters from here. These tailings are incredibly contaminated with mercury. They have kilos and kilos of mercury in them. Eventually all of these tailings are going to be washed through this waterway, and they're going to ultimately end up contaminating the food chain, getting into fish and contaminating those fish, and that's going to change into methyl mercury, which is even worse for you. The village of Mercury has about 2,000 people living in it, and there are more than a dozen processing sheds right here in the village. The operators here in Mercury make their own retorts. You'll see one behind me. It's capable of holding 20 kilos of amalgam, but it's only about 60% efficient, which means that 40% of that mercury is going to go up in smoke, in gas. It's going to volatilize and contaminate the entire area. So these children are playing daily, exposed to the contamination of the mercury from all of these sheds that surround this place. This is a really extraordinary amount of mercury. There's about 50 kilos of mercury here in one process round. Once the amalgam is created, they have to burn off the mercury. So what they normally do, if it's a large amount of mercury, they'll use the retort on top of a kerosene stove over here. They have their own big retorts for that. Otherwise, if it's a small ball of mercury, they'll just put it directly into the chimney. Using a petrol torch, they'll burn the amalgam here, and the gas will simply go off into the atmosphere. Now we're testing one of our big retorts. We've got 17 kilos of amalgam in here right now. It's just started to bubble. It's been burning for only about 15 minutes. I expect it will take about an hour, hopefully, to produce the full result. We are now producing mercury with this retort. However, we've had to take away the major length of pipe because it was causing too much resistance. Kemarin agak sulit ya?
Ya, agak susah kemarin.
Ya, tapi hari ini bagaimana?
Hari ini bagus.
Ya, kenapa?
Ya.
Kenapa Bapak bilang itu?
Karena ini dipotong,
Ya.
tongnya bisa masuk ke dalam.
Ya.
Jadi api dekat, malah panasnya cepat.
Lebih panas, lebih cepat ya?
Iya.
Ya. Nah, sekarang ada hasil?
Sekarang memang hasil sudah bagus.
Ya.
Tadi agak buntu penghasilannya karena spiralnya itu tersumbat.
Dan Anda lepaskan itu?
Iya, lepas malah bagus, lancar.
Lancar sekarang ya?
Iya.
Menurut Bapak, apa Anda akan dapat lebih banyak raksa nanti mungkin?
Mungkin.
Dengan
Itu
ini?
raksanya lebih banyak dan bersih.
Ya, bersih ya.
Bagus.
Iya,
Iya.
iya.
Mungkin dengan hitungan rata di sisi alat ini. Ya kalau memang prosesnya itu terus begitu, untuk kesehatan memang bagus.
Misi gelundung nah dari yayasan.
Dipasang.
Kalau dia dicor itu air raksa, kalau kita tidak memakai topi,
Ya.
kepala kan rasa mau pecah.
Oh ya.
Terus pernapasan kita agak sesak. Jadi kami langsung siram air keras,
Ya,
ditaruh tempat lain, kan dia cuma mengeluarkan asap biasa.
ya,
Nah itu
ya,
raksa bisa didapat kembali.
ya.
Itu kalau di air keras.
Itu
Kan
lebih aman ya
lebih aman
daripada dicor.
daripada dicor. Cuman kalau kita air keras itu apa namanya itu air raksa bukan dari milik kita. Tidak ada hitungan. Kalau dari ini kan kita masih mengambil hasilnya yang keluar dari ini. Kan hitung seumpamanya dia 1 on kan 60.000.
Betul,
Berarti umpama pentolan 1 kilo kita masih bisa mengeluarkan air raksa 3 on.
Orang penambang bisa
Iya,
kembalikan
bisa
hasil,
kembalikan
ya.
hasil. Iya.
bukan pos-pos ya.
Iya, bukan. Nah, itu.
Lebih manfaat ya.
Iya, manfaatnya. Memang bagus Pak manfaatnya ini. Ini sulingannya manfaatnya bagus. Suling. Efeknya kan tidak ada. Ya, hitungan kan safety kan aman bagi diri kita dan lingkungan ini.
Ya, ya.
Kita ini. Memang
Ya.
aman. Saya berani, pernah kan saya pakai, ada di sini juga satu.
Ya.
Pakai kemarin saya berani di dalam gudang itu berani. Dalam gudang. Karena tidak ada sesak napas. Nah, itu tidak ada. Karena penguapannya kan dia tidak melalui samping-samping, langsung ke sini penguapan.
Betul.
Pakai air, memang kayak kemarin prakteknya gini kan, air di bawah masuk.
Ya.
Memang tidak ada penguapan, daripada yang ada penguapannya daripada suhu panas nih. Tidak ada penguapan raksa.
Ya.
Tidak ada efeknya.
Baik.
Bagus ini. Baik.
Dan Anda dapat lebih banyak pendapatan, dapat
Iya.
uang lebih banyak.
Hasil bagus.
Ya.
Hasil bagus karena kan ini barang bisa sampai kering betul. Nggak ada air raksanya lagi, begitu selesai kan disuling, buka tutup, ambil.
Ya.
Tadi pentol tadi kan berupa lempengan.
Ya.
Itu dicor sudah nggak ada raksanya. Nggak apa kita hadapi. Nggak ada persen raksa, sudah sangat-sangat kurang lah.
Ya.
Ya.
Berarti Bapak pernah coba
Pernah
dipakai ya?
Pernah coba.
Ya.
Ada di sini satu.
Ya, baik.
Pernah. Baik, memang baik, saya akui. Asal jangan ada kebocoran. Atau kita memasang tutupnya mereng kan, nah itu bisa bocor.
Ya, harus rata.
Harus rata masuk. Kapan perlu kasih sabun.
Iya.
Pinggir.
Ya.
Kasih sabun itu.
Baik.
Kalau sabun colek, ke sabun jadi tidak ada
Ya.
untuk rasa keluar.
Ya. Mungkin kalau saya bawa ke bos, mungkin dia mau beli satu lagi ya.
Mungkin mau, tapi alangkah baiknya barang ini Bapak perbesar.
Ya.
Kalau yang begini, ukuran begini kan sudah ada.
Ya.
Bapak bawa yang diperbesar lah.
Sebesar apa Pak?
Sebesar ukuran 5 kilo, 10 kilo.
Ya.
Diperbesar. Kalau ini kan terlalu kecil.
Ya.
Ini kalau kayak mereka kan yang punya gelondong kan mereka proses bisa sampai 20 kilo.
Ya.
Nah itu
Tiap hari ya.
tiap hari.
Ya.
Kalau kami si pekerja ini apa? Mana kami kan proses paling 1 karung, 2 karung. Kalau yang punya bayangkan itu banyaknya gitu. Kan jelas sulingnya banyak pentolannya.
Ya.
Nah, itu sulingnya mungkin bisa 20 kilo.
Ya.
Nah, itu. Jadi dia perlu yang besar.
Ya. Saya akan coba Pak. Ya.
Ya.
Saya akan coba.
Kalau yang begini sudah banyak Pak. Sudah hampir ada semua punya gelondong ada.
Oh ya. Baik. Ya. Karena kita tadi ke sini 6 bulan yang lalu kita.
Oh, dari Bapak juga mungkin?
Ya. Dari yayasan kami. Ya.
Memang bagus begini.
Ya.
Bagus. Saya akui barang ini.
Terima kasih Pak.
Memang
Ya.
aman.
Baik.
Aman.
Terima kasih banyak.
Ya.
Here at Mount Murrow, there are trommel mill sheds literally all over the concession, and there's at least 50 of them, probably a lot more, each one of which requires a large retort of 20 or 30 kilos capacity to use every single day. So far we've only scratched the surface. We've only provided a limited number of large retorts and quite a few more of the small retorts, but there's a lot more to do here.